The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on your transmitter, and you want to make sure that all your knobs are to the right, turned clockwise, and all your buttons are pushed up or back. If you don't, when you turn it on, you'll get an error message instead of this screen, and I hope you can see that. I'm pretty sure you can, but I'll show you what it does when I leave the auto pilot or the auto level switch up and turn it on. It says switch error, and it gives that beeping sound. All you got to do is push the auto level switch back forward, and it'll go to this next screen. Now, after you turn on your transmitter, I'll give it to Donna. Then we'll need to turn on or plug in. And if you could plug that in, Donna. Yeah, just set that down. And you plug in your quad copter. But you may have to make sure you plug in your transmitter first, and then the quadcopter, and then it'll go beep, 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 and then it'll say safe mode in there, and it'll say self level is off. And if you flip the switch on the transmitter and go back and look, it says self level is on. I'm going to flip the switch again, and you'll see it go off, I hope. I'm having a problem seeing this in this lens. I guess I'll review this afterwards. Okay, so now the next thing you do is just make sure that your board is level, pushed all the way down in this little foamy pad, and then you're going to do a receiver test. So the first thing you can do is press the far right button. It'll say PI editor, and it'll say receiver test. You press the down button, it'll go to receiver test, and then you press the enter button again, which is the far right button, and you'll see your sub trims there. It says 1381, and it says auxiliary. The auxiliary channel is your auto level, and it's off right now, so if I turn it on, it'll go to on there. So don't worry about the auxiliary channel. But the aileron, the elevator, the throttle, and the rudder are not at zero. In order for you to start out flying pretty stable, you want to turn the sub trims in the transmitter so that these all say zero. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to the transmitter here, and we're going to press the up button. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, we're going to press the menu button, the top button here, and hold it for a second, and that'll bring you to the menu. And then you press the top up button. That moves it to the right to the function settings, and then you press the menu button again, and that brings you to all your function settings. And on here it says page 1 of 2. All we're going to be concerned with right now is page 1, and we're going to scroll down to sub trims. Now we're going to press menu again, and that'll bring you to your sub trims, and it says aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder, and it lists some at positive, some at negative. And all you got to do is press your positive and negative button here until your aileron, right now you got the aileron highlighted, so we're going to press the negative and positive button here until the aileron goes to 0. When the aileron went to 0, I pressed the positive button. So now we're going to press down so that the elevator is highlighted. Then we're going to go back and look at your elevator. On here it says 3, so we'll hit the negative. Now the negative is going the wrong way, so I got to hit the positive button till it gets to 0. And they bounce around between 0 and 1, and that's okay. That's a minor amount. Then you go back to your throttle. is 8. That wasn't all the way down. So now it's at 0. So now I got to go to rudder. So I'm going to change this to rudder. Then I'm gonna go ahead over here, hit the negative button. Oh, going the wrong way. So I'm gonna hit the positive button, and it went to 0. So all of them are at 0 or bouncing between 0 and 1, and that's okay. So I've trimmed it out so that it's gonna fly fairly level. So we got that pretty good, and that's what you want to do the first time you start out. Now, if you move this around, you'll see that because your left hand is your throttle up and down, and right and left is your rudder, and this one here would be your aileron and your elevator. So this is your elevator up and down, and this is your aileron left or right. Okay, so what do these do? The throttle, of course, makes it speed up, and your rudder makes it yaw or pivot. It pivots to the left and pivots to the right. You can fly it without using that. Now, you can use your aileron and your elevator to fly it. Your elevator tilts it forward and backward. So when moving the stick forward, it'll tilt forward if you're looking at the front of the copter, and it'll tilt backwards. If you tilt this backwards, and then it'll tilt to the right and tilt to the left, to get it to fly the way you want it to fly. So you'll have to practice that. You notice now that I tried to bring all my sticks to 0 by bouncing them a little bit, and they all went to 0 except for the rudder. Rudder's at a -1, so I'm going to change that a little bit. You're never going to get it exactly 0, but as soon as you get them trimmed in, then you want to hit the menu button again to save it. Okay, and then you want to exit out of there. If you don't hit the menu button again, if you just hit the exit button, then they won't be saved in here, and these will go back to the old settings. Alright, so now I hit the exit button twice, and I'm back to the main screen, and we're ready to fly. The only other thing that you would want to do later, and you don't have to do this very often if you don't want to, you go back to the beginning where it says safe, then you hit the menu button, and now you want to scroll down to miscellaneous. Oh, I'm mistaken, so I'll go back. Not miscellaneous. Back to self-level settings. We don't need to worry about that. Camera, no. Sensor test. So this will sense if it's level or not. So we'll press enter, and it says OK. The sensors are saying that it's okay, and if you move this around, you'll see the sensors will move with it. And you can play around with this a little bit. ACC calibration, I'm sorry, that would be the level. So we can go continue, read it, and it says you need to be on a level surface, which I am, and hit it again, and it'll automatically count down by 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then calibrate to make sure that all the gyros are saying that it's level right now, which it wasn't, because I had this one foamy out of place. But it doesn't have to be perfect. So you press continue, and it says calibration succeeded. Continue again, and then just go back up. And you can read more about all these settings. The PI editor is for adjusting your sensitivity of all your controls. So now you go back until the motor stops beeping, where it says safe. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the battery on top. So I put the battery on top. It's got Velcro on the bottom of the battery, and it's got Velcro on the top here, and I just put it down. And then I have 2 rubber bands, which I left one in the house, and I got a little pin on this side and a little pin on this side, in the front and in the back, so that I hold it down. And we're going to do that. So I'm going to go get the other rubber band, and then we'll start again, and I'll show you how to fly it. Okay, as you can see, I got the rubber band hooked around the screws and then wrapped around the top, just to keep it from moving if you do crash it. Now, this is not indestructible, Henry. This will bend if it falls from a tree top. If it falls from 30 feet, this aluminum bars will bend. So the key here is just get it to fly a little bit, and usually you want it about 3 feet off the ground before it starts to stabilize. Plus, you want to start flying with this top switch pulled back towards you. You want this top switch pulled back towards you, because that means that the auto level is on. So that way when you do get it up in the air, it's somewhat stabilized, and it's not gonna, if you let go of the sticks, it's just gonna stay, unless there's a breeze, it'll stay right. It'll stay pretty much in the same spot. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to put the camera on the tripod, and I'm going to fly this thing using the sticks. Like I said, the left stick is throttle up and down, and then yaw left to right, and then so that would be yaw to the left, so it will be spinning to the left, spinning to the right, very slow, and then this would be tilt forward, tilt backwards, tilt left, and tilt right. So we're going to do that. I won't be able to show you how I'm doing it with the sticks, but you'll be able to see it fly. So and you get it up in the air, and once you get it up in the air, you just get it and try and turn it. If you can't turn it, you let off the throttle and let it bounce on the ground on the styrofoam, and that way it won't get broken. You might break a propeller, and I'm going to send not hundreds, I'm going to send 10 or 15 extra propellers for you. So and I'll show you how to get those off. Those are just a hole in the spindle in the top, and you hold the propeller and put a nail through the hole, a little tiny nail, and then twist it off, or a small drill bit, but a tiny nail, and I'll send the nail with it. It's actually a pretty small hole. One of those trim nails for the wood trims in the house. Alright, so here we go.
Doesn't photograph very well.
You just can't see it very well in that screen.
You can't see very well on the sidewalk at all. If you keep it towards the grass, you can see it really good. As long as there's color.
Oh, something fell off.
Yeah, something fell.
Yeah, something fell off. got enough?
Hopefully I got enough.
Okay, son. Hope you enjoyed the video. The only thing I gotta say is one more thing I gotta let you know about, and that is the transmitter. It says battery is 11 volts right now. Battery 11 up there. That's 1 volt shy. It's actually 12, and the battery is a 3S battery. And 3S batteries fully charged at 12.6. This is down to 12. It's a glitch in their software. They just haven't fixed it yet, but that's okay. This'll you just got to remember when it gets down to down around 10, less than 10 volts, so less than 9 volts on here, that you have to recharge the battery. If you take these things too low, they won't recharge. Now, that's one thing that I did forget to show you, so we're going to do that right now, is how to charge a battery. I won't show you how to charge the one inside the transmitter. That's a separate connection. That actually, this battery charger has 2 connections. It has the yellow plug, and the yellow plug connects to the battery's yellow plug. So we'll plug that in. But the smaller connection, the smaller red connection, that connects to the transmitter battery. Now there's 2 ways you can charge this. These being, and I would suggest reading up on these batteries. They're lithium polymer batteries, and they have to be balanced charged. So on the side of this charger you have ports for the different series batteries. You have 2S, 3S, 4S, 5S, and 6S batteries. Well, the 2S are the smaller plugs, the 3S is the middle one, and that's the batteries that I use. And the 4S, then the 5S, then the 6S. We don't have to worry about anything but the 3S. So I'm going to plug this little white plug into the side of the battery charger. Then I'm going to plug the 2 yellow plugs together, and then I'm going to plug the power cord into the side of the battery charger, and then I'll show you how to set up the battery charger for balanced charging. It's very easy. Be right back. Okay, now you can see I have the white plug plugged into the side in the top middle, and then I plug the yellow battery plugs and the charger plug together. The next thing I'm going to do, it says LiPo charge 0.1 amp. Ours is a 2700 milliamp, and if you multiply that times out, that's 2.7 amps. And we can charge this as high as a 2.7 amp charge to get it charged in about 45-50 minutes, depending on how drained it is. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to move this status button to the right. You have a tight button. You don't have to worry about that unless it's not on LiPo. Then you have to get it back. And then status, we'll change this from LiPo charge to LiPo balance. And I already have it set up for 2.7 amps. Now that's what they say charging a battery, a charge rate of 1C. Never want to charge these LiPo batteries more than 1C. So you can charge it less, but it'd take longer. You just can't charge it more. So 1C is equal to the current, 1 times the current, which is 2.7 amps or 2700 milliamps. This is a 3S battery. So I have it set for 11.1 volts, 3S. It's set on balance, and you have to have the balance plug in, and I do. And then I want to press start, and it's going to ask, it flashes the 2.7 amps, asking me if I want to change that, and I don't. So I'm just going to hold the start button down, it'll say battery check weight, and it's checking the battery. It says, okay, the battery's a 3S and you say it's a 3S. Now if I want to continue charging it, it says if I want to confirm it, then I press enter or start again, and I'll just press start again, and now as you can see it's starting to charge, and we have a current voltage of 11.5 volts. You never want to take these batteries down below 9.6 volts, and I have the ESCs. These pink things are the ESCs. I have the ESCs set up so that, and I'm going to give you the program card. This is the program card for the ESCs, and you can set up the various types. If you get a different battery type, that's the second one down, and it's pretty easy to set up. You plug it in, you plug your battery into it. Oh, you don't even have to plug your battery into it because this is a special type of ESC that powers the card. And then you can just change it. And you can read up on how to change it. I wouldn't change anything in here. It's set up for the safest to operate safely. And most certainly you can learn how to reprogram these ESCs with new firmware that do more things as you learn about quad copters. But for right now, they're set up to operate safe and long. They're not set up to operate for performance where you would be racing or anything or doing acrobats with it. So I've got everything pretty much done for you. You have two counter rotating propellers, and you have two clockwise rotating propellers. So the color means nothing, it's just happened to be the color that I got. So they say you should put one color on the front, and number 1 motor I got marked as 1, and number 2 motor I got marked as 2 here. So number 1 motor is always going to be clockwise, number 2 motor is always going to be counterclockwise, 3 is going to be clockwise, 4 is going to be counterclockwise. But you can actually set this thing up for different type of flying. I got it set up for X configuration. For 1 and 2 motor is tilt forward. You can most certainly set it up for T through this control board so that 1 only is tilt forward. It's a little less stable if you do it in the T configuration versus the X configuration. But once you get better at it, you can try out the different configurations and maybe even turn this into an octocopter or a hexacopter. The transmitter is more than you'll ever need for this transmitter. It'll fly planes, it'll fly gliders. All you'll need to do is just get a receiver. Now you get a transmitter, you get a receiver that's on the side here, and when I turn on the transmitter and plug in the battery to here, a red light will come on in this receiver and this rubber band to the side. You only need to bind the receiver once. So if the receiver gets trashed, you pay $10, you get another receiver, but you have to bind it. And the way to do that, there's a little button on the back, and YouTube will show you how to bind it, or you can read in the instruction manual that I'm going to send you on how to bind the receiver and transmitter together, so that the transmitter talks to the receiver and the receiver talks to the control board. The control board talks to the ESCs, and the ESCs talk to the motors. It is basically how it goes. And in between there's all kinds of settings that you can set to get it to fly more stable or less stable. And auto leveling is one of the best settings. You could see through the video that it was hovering, although it wasn't perfectly stable, because once I went back and checked the subtrims again, you notice how it was floating backwards towards me a lot instead of hovering straight above. Well, that's because the aileron was still 1 digit off. So instead of hovering stable, it was tilted back. But it wasn't enough to bother the flight too much. I could still hit the aileron a little bit and make it tilt forward a little bit and tilt to the left, and you'll get good at this. Just remember, bring it up off the ground, tilt it left, tilt it right. If you crash it flat on the ground, it'll probably be real good. If you crash it into a tree and it hits at an angle on the motor, you might bust a motor mount because they're only aluminum, or bend a motor mount. And if you bend a motor so that it's tilted one way or another, now you're it's going to change the pitch and the yaw of the quadcopter, and you'll actually have to try and straighten that out and put the motor back on straight again. So avoid crashing it from high places and out of trees. If it just bounces straight off the ground, more than likely you're not going to damage it whatsoever. If it just goes flat on the ground, you'll be just fine. The worst thing that could possibly happen is a battery fly off, or you break a propeller if you possibly, if you land slightly to the side. But you're probably not going to bend a motor mount. So, but yeah, try it in the air. Just got to remember to turn on the auto level switch before you hit the throttle up. Now, another thing you got to do is you've got to what's called arm the control board. When you first turn it on, you turn on your transmitter, then you plug in your battery for your quadcopter, and then it says safe. That means that you can move the throttle and it's not going to move anywhere. What you have to do is called arming the control board, and that's pushed all the way to the right, and hold it there, and there'll be a red light on the control board that comes on, and you may not be able to see it because the battery's over it, but you just got to hold it there for about 3 seconds and then move the throttle up and it'll start going. I think I'll show you that as soon as the battery gets done charging in about 25 minutes. But and then I have it set for auto disarm, so that means after 20 seconds approximately it'll auto disarm again, and you'll have to, if you haven't used it, you'll have to rearm it again in order to get the blades to move. And then if you want to purposely disarm it so that you can carry it around, then you would move the throttle in the off position all the way down, no RPM, to the left, and the left would be disarming your quadcopter. So arm it means to set everything in motion so that you can move the throttle up. Now remember, these blades, you'll see, create a lot of breeze, so that when you first start taking off the pavement or off the grass, it's going to be a little bit unstable for the first foot approximately because of the backwash, because of the breeze that's bouncing off the ground and hitting the quadcopter back again. So it's going to make it a little bit unstable. So you want to get it up off the ground at least 2 feet before it starts to stabilize pretty good. And then slowly bring it up. Once you get used to the throttle, bring it up to about 5 feet off the ground, and just tap on the forward or the left or right a little bit, or the back, to get it to move around a little bit and still stay pretty stable. And you might have to increase the throttle a little bit. I don't have it perfectly set, and that's what I was talking about before, where you could set the different gains in here to allow more sensitivity for your aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle to stabilize a little bit more. I'll let you read more into the instructions in that, but in between I think you'll have fun for about 10-15 minutes of flying just like I did, and just getting good at using the sticks. Once you get good at using the sticks and getting it to move left and right, not a long ways, and just remember, if it starts flying too far away from you and you lose orientation where you don't remember which way is forward or backward, and moving the stick forward and backward is not working the way you think it should be working, you just reduce the throttle and let it come straight down onto the ground. If you're in a grassy area, you're probably not going to dent it up. If you let it go onto a sidewalk or something, then it'll probably bend the frame if you're more than 10 feet in the air. So you have to kind of watch that. Do it in a grassy area and I think you'll have lots of fun. Like I said, if you get into trouble if it's 10-15 feet off the ground, just reduce the throttle so it slowly comes back down and hits the ground. Even, like I said, use a football field. That way you don't have to worry about how far away it gets from you. And just practice it. Bring a couple of your friends out there. Maybe one of your friends knows how to fly it. I don't know. But crash it flat, straight going to the ground if you can. That's pretty much it until I plug it back in and show you how to arm it. There's not a whole lot you need to know from here. I've showed you everything in the video. Without going into great detail, I'm going to send you a charger, I'm going to send you a battery, and send you the quad copter. It's all put together. I'm going to send you the transmitter. All of this together is about $300. The transmitter and receiver in the control board is $100. The charger and the battery is $35. So $135 of this $300, or about half the price, was the transmitter, the charger, and the battery, and the control. There's other odds and ends that I spent money on, but if you had to replace a motor, it's about $10. If you have to replace an ESC, it's about $15. If you break a wire, you can solder them back together. You can even get wire, or I can send you wire. You know, the receiver's $10, the control board's $30 if you buy a separate one. Propellers are $2 they're about $1 a piece. So you can put new styrofoam on the bottom, bigger if you want, more if you want along the bottom. Whatever works for you, you can make a. I notice I got a styrofoam piece on the table here. If you wanted to, you could get a bigger piece of styrofoam and just make it so it's a bumper. You know. Watch the YouTube videos, you'll see a lot of different variations. Now they say you should balance the motors and balance the propellers, but you're not going to be somebody who's going to fly a lot of high-speed flying where it's going to cause a lot of damage to the motor by having it at 100% RPM all the time. So it's just like tires on your car. It's not really necessary to balance them if you're just going to be doing silly city driving. It's the same thing here. Now once you get to learn what you're doing, then most certain, and you get into higher end motors and bigger propellers, it'll be important for you to balance the stuff. I built the quadcopter frame out of metal because I kept breaking the wood. You can go to Lowe's, maybe a local hardware store, and get some 3/4 inch poplar. I got 1/2 inch aluminum, and then you can figure out how to build your own quadcopter. There's many different ways of doing it. You can even build one out of styrofoam. I'm going to do that next. Build one out of this styrofoam here. Put the 4 motors on it and a control board. Buy a new transmitter, receiver, charger, and then we'll have some competition. So in any case, I love you, son. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, P.S. This nail here, this little nail. This is a nail that I use to slip through the hole, and I'll mail it to you. And that way you can hold the propeller and spin the spinner off the top. But you got to remember to put those spinners on tight. I'll even send you a couple extra motor mounts in case you break your motor mount, and a few extra screws in the bottom of the motor. And some wire ties, and I'll send you some extra parts and stuff. And if you need a table for your room, let me know. I'll get you a little card table for your room so you can put this on and work. I have a workbench. Love you, son. Okay, Henry. The battery's fully charged. It took 45 minutes to charge, so that wasn't completely drained. That was about 3/4 drained, so you'd have had about 5 more minutes of flight time out there. When the battery does get too low, these ESCs are programmed to not drain the battery, so it slowly reduces the RPM of the motors, so it'll just start coming down out of the sky. It won't come down quick, but it'll start reducing the RPM of the motors, and you won't be able to. You'll have to probably go get it and pick it up, depending on how far away it is from you. But wanted to show you when we plug it in how it arms. So hold on. Alright, so you can see when we turn on the transmitter first, Then we plug in the battery, and you can see the receiver underneath this bar has a little red light in there. That means if it's flashing, that means it's not, you still have to bind it to the transmitter, or to the transmitter. So, but you only need to do that one time. So if you get a new receiver, you'll have to bind it to the transmitter to get that light to stop blinking. But in any case, now it says safe there, and we want to arm it so we can fly it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it to the right all the way and hold it there. But before I do that, I want to show you the light, that red light that pops on. So I'm going to move the stick all the way to the right, and there's didn't even take 3 seconds, and I let go of the stick to disarm it, or to arm it. So now I'm going to push it all the way to the left, and the light goes out. Now it automatically disarms after about 20 seconds anyway, maybe 30 seconds, somewhere around in there. So we will arm it now. Move it to the right. The red light, well, the red light comes on, and I had pushed the throttle up. And see, that's why you shouldn't arm it in the house. So I'm going to go ahead and disarm it. And yeah, Donna's going to shoot me now. So
I'll shoot him.
yeah, don't do that in the house. So anyway, the battery takes about 45 minutes to charge. I'm going to send you extra props with it. These are a little chewed up, but I figure I'll give you some chewed up ones to start with so you don't wreck the good ones. And then you can practice flying, and then I'm going to give you different size props too to see. I'm going to give you smaller ones. These are 945s, and it says right on the prop, right there, I don't know if you can see it, 945. R means turns right. It's a right hand. And then this one here says 945, 9 times 9x 4.5. So they call them 945s. And it doesn't say left hand, it just says, the R is omitted, so it means it turns left. So I'm going to go ahead and mark motor number 1. It's supposed to turn clockwise, so you remember that clockwise propeller's got to go on there. Right hand propeller. And it'll be all good to go. Now if you ever disconnect these wires to the ESCs, all you have to do is switch them around, 2 wires. Just switch 2. If you disconnect them and you forget which way they go, it doesn't matter. Start it up. If it's spinning in the wrong direction, stop it. Just switch 2 wires. Doesn't matter which 2 wires you switch. You just switch 2 wires, and then it'll spin in the opposite direction. So, and that's all you need to know. I'm sure you won't remember all of this, but you'll enjoy it, I'm sure. So, love you, son. Bye again.
One slide.
Okay, Henry.
P gain within the auto level settings is basically how sensitive the craft is to auto level. Now if you have your P gains very high, it's going to make a very snappy craft where if you let go of the sticks in a bank, it will very quickly respond and come to level. Now that all sounds good in theory, but what happens is you can put that too high and create high-speed oscillations where the craft will go level, it'll slightly overshoot, and then it will overshoot the opposite direction, constantly trying to compensate. So you'll end up with this thing that's always trying to stay level, but it'll be going back and forth just to stay there. So you don't want to do that. Now you also don't want it too low to the point that auto level is a little sloppy. I actually like it in fairly low settings, maybe 30, 40, 150 sometimes. But if it's too low, you basically end up with a craft that won't level itself very quickly. So you have to dial that in. Okay, now we're done with P gain. Let's hop on into P limit. Basically what P limit does is it controls how much input you can give the board. So you could be bashing the sticks side to side, but if you have a very, very low P limit, the craft will still be moving fairly smoothly and it's not going to be really jerky or have a heavy lean angle to it. Now with the P limit very, very high, you generally have to be a slightly better pilot. It's for more aggressive flying that you need to make quick changes. So low P limit can actually reduce the amount of maneuverability the craft has, whereas a high P limit will give you a lot of maneuverability while still being in auto level. Okay, last but not least is accelerometer trimming. Now, this feature is actually very simple and important for some and not so much for others, and it depends on how you've mounted your board and if your craft is perfectly true. If you take off in auto level and notice there's always a drift to one direction, you need to be careful not to do this in wind because you'll be compensating for that. But if it's always drifting to one direction, you can put a positive or negative value into these features to compensate that drift out. So basically, with your roll axis in the accelerometer trim, a positive value means a right-hand compensation. Now your pitch axis, a positive value means a rearwards compensation. So if you're drifting to the left, you'd put a positive value in to compensate to the right. If you're drifting forward, you'd put a positive value in to compensate rearwards. And there you have it. Now you know everything you need to know about the KK2 and auto leveling. So if you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like it. If you want to contact me, you can actually go to my website, which is rcmanchild.com, and you can see some of my products there. There's a little contact button at the bottom if you want to shoot me a personal email. I'm doing a lot of electronics development for the multi-rotor industry right now, so I've got some custom motors, custom speed controls, hopefully brushless gimbals coming out soon. So stay in touch there, and you can check out my Facebook page as well. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care.
Hi everyone, this is Frank here with Die Hard RC Addicts, and today's video is sponsored by Hobby King. Welcome to part 2 of the Hobby King SK450 quadcopter. If you missed part 1, the build, you can watch it by clicking on the link to the right on the video. For those of you who are like myself and building and setting up your first quadcopter, or if you're just new to the KK2 board and need help setting it up, I've decided to put a menu in here so it'll make it easy for you to click on the links to find what you're looking for. In this section, we're going to be going over the equipment setup. This is making sure that the radio is set up right, the receiver is all plugged in correctly, and the motors are all spinning in the right direction. You'll need to set up your radio transmitter for a normal airplane without any mixing. You'll also want to set your sub trims and your regular trims to 0 or to the neutral position. I found with my RDS 8000 Airtronics radio that I had to have the elevator and the aileron set at reverse on the throws, and the throttle and the rudder were set at normal. That may vary depending on what radio you're using, but that's what worked on mine. Once you have the transmitter set up and bound to the receiver, you're going to need to test all the motors and ESCs individually to make sure they're spinning in the correct direction. You can either use the radio transmitter and receiver and plug them, each one of them individually into the throttle channel and run them up to make sure they're spinning in the correct direction, or you can do like I did and use a servo tester and plug them into the ESCs. So starting with motor number 1, which is the one on the left hand side on the front, you're going to want this one spinning clockwise. So if it's not spinning the right direction, swap 2 of the wires on the ESC to make sure it's turning the right way. Motor number 2 is the one on the right at the front, and this one needs to be spinning counterclockwise. So again, just check and make sure if you have to swap the wires, swap them. Motor number 3 is at the back on the right hand side, and this one needs to be turning clockwise. Motor number 4 is on the left hand side at the back, and this one needs to be turning counterclockwise. Once you have all the motors turning in the right direction, we can plug in all the ESCs and the receiver wire leads. The wires from the receiver plug into the KK2 board in the order of aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, and then the 5th one is an auxiliary channel. I used my gear channel, and this is going to be used to turn on and off the auto leveling in the KK2 board. All 4 of the ESC wires are going to plug into the right hand side bank, and they're going to go from motor 1 to motor 4 in that sequence. and it's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now that we have all the equipment basically set up, it's time to move on. In this section of the video, we're going to be covering the basic setup of the KK2 board. Before arming the control board, you want to make sure that you take all 4 of the props off the quadcopter for safety reasons. To arm the KK board properly, you want to turn on the radio transmitter first, then plug in the battery and wait for all of the 4 ESCs to initialize. Once you hear all 4 of them have done their initialization beeps, then you can go into the menu. The enter button is going to be the one all the way to the right. It boots up in the safe mode, so you want to hit this button to get into the menu. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit more so you guys can see what's on the menu. Now that we're zoomed in, we're going to go ahead and go through the basic setup of the KK2 board. I'm not going to cover everything that's available in this menu, so we're going to go ahead and set up what's necessary to get the quadcopter flying. Alright, so the first thing we're going to see is the PI editor. We're going to come back to that one. So the first thing we're going to do here is scroll down till we get to load motor layout, and we're going to hit the enter button to get into that sub menu. And then once we're in this menu, we can search for the type of quadcopter that we're setting up. So we want to hit the down button till we find the Quad X configuration. Alright, here it is, quadcopter X mode. Hit enter to select it. It asks if you're sure, hit yes. And now you're set up for a Quad X configuration. And here it shows you the motor layout as far as what direction they're supposed to be turning. So if we hit the next button, it'll show you each individual motor. This is motor 1, it's showing clockwise. Motor 2, counterclockwise. Motor 3, clockwise. And motor 4, counterclockwise. So you want to make sure that all your motors are turning in those directions in order for it to fly correctly. We're going to go ahead and hit the back button, and it brings us back to the sub menu, and hit it back again, and we're back into the main menu. And from here we're going to scroll up till we get to receiver test. We're going to go ahead and hit the enter button, and that'll take you into the menu for dialing in your sub trims on your radio, and also for checking the direction to make sure that it's correct. So first I'm going to move the sticks around to make sure that directions are showing correctly. So I've got right aileron and it's showing right. I've got left aileron and it's showing left. I've got forward elevator, back elevator, those are correct. If any of these things are reading wrong, then you need to go into your radio and reverse the direction of that servo. The throttle one is fine. It's set to 0. I don't want to mess with that. It's set at idle, which is correct. And the rudder, let's test the rudder. Left is correct. Right is correct. Again, like I said, if any of those are wrong, you want to reverse the throw on the servo in the radio menu, your transmitter menu. Okay, the next thing you want to look at here are the numbers next to the aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder. They should all be reading 0. If they're not, you need to get into your radio and use your sub trim to 0 them out. When they're all 0, everything is good, and you can hit the back button. Now we're just going to scroll down and take a quick look at stick scaling. Think of this as kind of like the rates on your radio transmitter. The higher these numbers are, the more responsive the quadcopter will be. If you're into doing like stunts and stuff like that, then you probably want to set the numbers pretty high to make it very responsive. But if you're going to be using it for like a camera platform, or if you're a beginner like me, you're going to want to keep the numbers low. Right now they're pretty low, so I'm just going to leave them alone. I just wanted to show you guys what it was. So let's go ahead and back out of this. The next thing we're going to do is calibrate the ESCs. So we're going to scroll down till we find ESC calibration. And this is basically going to give you a set of instructions at first. And in bold letters it says make sure that you take the props off, because it could be dangerous if you don't. Next it says check the throttle direction in the receiver test menu. Reverse if necessary. Alright, we've already done that, so we're going to hit continue. Here it says to memorize the rest of the instructions, because the next step is to turn off the power. Once you've scrolled through the rest of the instructions and memorized them, the last one is going to say continue, and it'll take you back to the main menu, and you can go ahead with the calibration. Okay, to do the actual calibration, you're probably going to need somebody to help you. You're going to first unplug the battery, and then you want to turn on the transmitter and move the throttle stick all the way to the maximum position. Then you're going to want to hold down button number 1 and button number 4 and have your helper plug in the battery. And you should get a confirmation beep after a few seconds. Alright, then you can move the throttle all the way down to idle, and you'll get another confirmation beep, and you can let go. Alright, it sounds like all the ESCs are armed. Now we're ready to do a throttle check. In order to do this, we need to get the KK2 board out of the safe mode and into the armed mode. You want to move your throttle stick over to the bottom right hand side and for a couple seconds, and it'll arm the KK2 board. It should say armed on here, and the red LED light should light up. And now you're ready to test the throttle. What you're looking for here is you want to make sure that all of the motors are synchronized and they start up at the same exact time. So move the throttle up slowly and make sure that all the motors are starting up at the same exact time. The other thing you want to look for here is to make sure that you have your rotation set correctly on the motors, that the ones that are supposed to be rotating clockwise are rotating clockwise, and the counter rotating one should be turning the other direction. Alright, everything looks good, so we're going to go ahead and get back into the program mode. Alright, to save your settings and to get back in the menu, you want to move the throttle stick all the way over to the left hand side at the bottom, and it should go back into the safe mode, and you can click on the menu button and get back in the menu. Okay, if for some reason your motors are not all synchronized and not starting up at the same time, you can adjust this in the miscellaneous settings. If you click on this to enter, at the top it says minimum throttle setting. The default is set at 10. I actually had to crank mine up to 20 to get all the motors to start up at the same time. So you just play around with that number until you get it set where you like it. Alright, let's go back to the menu. From here we're going to scroll up to mode settings, hit enter, and here it shows your self-leveling set at stick. In order to use an auxiliary channel, you're going to want to change this to auxiliary. You hit the change button and it switches it. The next one down is I of PI, and it's set to on right now. I'm going to leave that alone for the moment. Below that is arming. This is how the system arms, and it's set to stick. This is a safety so that your props don't accidentally run up if you bump the throttle, and I would leave it at that if you're running any kind of multi-rotor. If you're flying an airplane, you can probably turn it off so that way it arms automatically every time you turn the system on. The last one at the bottom here is link roll pitch, and it links the roll and pitch settings of the PI together so that if you move one, the other one moves as well. That way they're always the same. I would leave this on yes. Alright, let's go back into the main menu. Next we're going to do the sensor calibration. Hit enter, and this is going to give you instructions on how to calibrate the sensors for the self-leveling feature. Basically, you want to make sure that the quadcopter is sitting on a nice flat and level surface. You want to check it with the bubble level or something to make sure that it's 100% level. And then hit the continue button, and it should start the calibration. Alright, what it's doing now is it's figuring out this attitude for what's going to be as the default level. When you hit that switch on your transmitter, it's going to bring it to that position. So you want to make sure that you're definitely on a level surface. Alright, we're going to hit continue, and it says calibration succeeded. Hit continue again, and we're back to the main menu. Now we're going to do a sensor test. So go to sensor test, hit enter, and it's going to show you if all the sensors are okay. It'll say okay next to them. If you see any of them that say not okay, then you have a problem with the board and it would probably need to be replaced. But all of these are saying okay, so all the sensors are in good shape. So hit back, and we're back to the main menu. Okay, there's only a couple more things I want to go over before we get into doing some flight testing. We're going to go all the way back to the PI editor first. These are the stock settings in here: 150, 100, 50, and 20. And I've been doing some research on the RC forums. RC groups in particular has a really large forum on there. I'll put a link in the video information bar below the video so you can check it out. From what I've been getting on there, they're saying that these settings are okay for if you're running a hexcopter or a octocopter. It would probably work okay. But for quadcopters and tricopters, these settings are pretty high and will cause the quadcopter to fly pretty unstable. We're going to go ahead and change the settings here. So if you push down on the button, it brings the number up, and we're going to bring this down to around 45. I believe that's what it said in the forums was a good number for quadcopters. So set this to 45, hit done, and then we're going to leave the P limit alone. 100 is supposed to be good for the P limit, but they're saying that for the I gain you want to set that at about somewhere between 50 to 100% of the P gain. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this one down to around 20. I think should probably be good. Let's see. We can fine tune this when we get the quadcopter outside. Or actually, let's go with the 25. Alright, hit done. And for the I limit, it's set at 20. I'm going to leave that one alone as well. So that pretty much sets the gains for both the roll and the pitch. Now we need to scroll back up to the top so we can switch the yaw. So if you hit change, it'll bring it over to elevator. Hit it one more time and it'll bring it to the yaw, the rudder. I've already changed it in here. I have it set for the P gain at 60 and the I gain is 30. I left the P limit and the I limit alone at 20 and 10. Again, I did 50% of what the P gain was for the I gain. So originally the P gain was at 90, so I brought it down to 60, and the I gain I brought it down to 30, which is half of what the P gain is. Alright, we're done setting the gains. Let's go ahead and back out of this. We've got one more thing to look at, and that's the self-level settings. If we go into here, you can see that I have the P gain and the P limit set to 60, and the I gain and the I limit set to 0. The settings that are in here determine how much control you have over the quadcopter when you're flying it in the self-level mode. The higher the numbers are set, the more control you'll have over the quadcopter. The lower they're set, the less control you'll have. I suggest definitely for the first flight to set the numbers up a little bit higher, because the quadcopter may veer one way or the other until you get it set up correctly. So I've got mine set at 60 and 60, and I'm going to back out of here. I've got my props balanced, and they're back on the quadcopter. So setup is complete, and it's ready to go out and do some testing and tuning and the initial test flights. But we're going to save that for part 3 coming up here pretty soon. So please stay tuned, guys. And I want to say thanks to all of you for watching part 2 of the SK450 quadcopter. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Hobby King for sponsoring this video. See you guys again soon here on Die Hard RC Addicts.